coupon code podcast at checkout to try your first 30 days for free. A little bit of housekeeping before we get into the show. The content in this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to cure, diagnose, treat, or prevent any disease. This information has not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. We are not doctors, nor do we play one on the internet. Please seek advice from a qualified healthcare professional. Okay, MC Calico, take it away.
Yeah. Smoking herbal blends. We need some mullein and some kush, my brethren. While listening to HerbRally podcast again. Herbalism at its finest with Mason Hutchinson. Yeah.
All right, so let's switch gears here, Michael, and talk about creating medicinal forests.
Great. Okay. Well, so one of my big goals in life is global ecosystem restoration, climate stabilization, and I know a lot about that stuff. And I teach growing medicinal herbs workshops. This is my fourth year with a 3-part, spring, summer, fall series of classes on growing medicinal plants. And I also teach a lot about agroforestry and ethnobotany and permaculture. And so I've combined all of those plant topics into a new thing I'm promoting, which is I'm calling it creating medicinal forests. So we know that approximately almost half of the plants in any temperate zone I go to, at any rate, I'm most familiar with temperate, are going to be medicinal. So anytime you have a forest, there's always medicinal plants in it. But I think we should be planting small little. There's food forests that have become really now. A lot of people know about the term food forest, where you create a small little food forest. People know about the term Miyawaki forest, where people go for forest bathing and for mental health. There's called urban pocket parks or urban pocket forests. And there's a guy who started something called a national parks in your backyard, where you create like a little wild area, a native area in your backyard. So there's all this talk about creating small bits of forest and community forests. And so I'm promoting the idea that they should all be viewed as medicinal forests. They could have food as a primary objective, but medicine could be the secondary objective. Some forests, all forests I think it would be difficult to make a forest that didn't have medicinal trees and shrubs, etc., in it. Difficult. But you can design specifically a little forest that are focused predominantly, maybe not wholly, but predominantly on medicinal plants. And that becomes a community resource. Unlike a garden, annuals and maybe short-term or even longer-term perennials, the medicine comes and goes, the gardens come and go. But if you plant a little forest and it gets going and it keeps going, there you have medicine for decades or generations to come. And so everywhere can have part of its own local medicines. We want localization. We want healthy people using herbal medicines instead of the alternatives, the technological alternatives. And so I think that creating medicinal forests is an idea whose time has come, and that a lot of people are going to want to do this around the world. And here's an example. I was on a Zoom call yesterday with the Eco Restoration Alliance, which is an international alliance of people that are doing ecosystem restoration, such as me. And there was one of the people that gave a presentation was Usman. I can't remember his last name right now, but he's from Senegal, and he works also in Mauritania and different parts of the Sahel. And so they're living. This is a very dry area, and he's describing some of the villages. He has a lot of photos of a lot of the villages that he's working with. He's working with like 100 villages now, and he had the before and after pictures. And before, we're looking at like a desolate wasteland of, there may be a few trees or not in the landscape, but as it's sort of like bare dirt. There's like virtually no plants at all. And very stark conditions, hot, dry, hardly any vegetation. And now they're turning that around. They're doing reforestation. They're fixing up the soils. They're bringing life back. They're doing water retention. And so it's a very tough situation. And so during our conversation, I said, I'm promoting creating medicinal forest. So today I wrote him and I said, Usman, can I be of help in this? I said, maybe you have a panel or a group of local herbalists, local healing people that have made you a list of the most important medicinal plants culturally for your region. And you should, and you are already in process of planting these medicinal forests and medicinal gardens to bring these so that the people have medicines, because obviously they're mostly gone. And maybe I can be of some help in promoting the idea at any rate. So we'll see if I end up helping Usman, but I'd like to actually help people in other parts of the world with creating medicinal forests. And I've created I don't have one to show you right here, but I have a book called a Subtropical and Tropical Medicinal Plants Checklist. It's a checklist of subtropical and tropical medicinal plants, trees, shrubs, herbs. And I think it's around 1,500 species in there. And it's a nice little bit of research, all in Latin, some common names. And I do have one of these. This is my growing and wildcrafting medicinal plants in the Pacific Northwest. And I have a checklist of temperate zone herbal species, and I have 1,062 species on the temperate zone list. So I have these, I collect books on medicinal plants. I have hundreds of books, and I collect books on trees. And at any rate, I have a very large research library. I've been researching this for a long time. And so anybody in the world that wants to put in a medicinal forest, I can probably help them with some possible lists or resources. How can they, I'm at the surface of the medicinal trees of the world now. They're one of my bosses, and some of them are thorny. So I got to be careful and try to stick up for them. So at any rate, so I'm really wanting this idea. And so maybe some of you out there listeners, some of you listeners are going to go like, oh yeah, I'll make a medicinal forest, and it doesn't have to be big, or you could start a small one and then gradually learn, or maybe add on to it to help start other ones. But wouldn't it be nice to see a whole network of medicinal forests? The United Plant Savers, who are friends of yours as well, they have a botanical sanctuary list, and you can go on their website, and there's a map of the world, I think, and there'll be little stars or whatever, and you can click on it, and it takes you to that botanical sanctuary information, so you can see where they are. Well, we should have eventually a map of medicinal gardens. I imagine there may be a map of Milwaukee gardens right now. One of the Ecosystem Restoration Alliance projects is they've made a map of the world. It's called the Big Map of Ecosystem Restoration or something like that. And they have a world map, and you can click on it, and they have hundreds and hundreds, and they're aiming for thousands and thousands of projects for ecosystem restoration around the world. And so you can go there and see where all these projects are and learn about them. So at any rate, any of you webmasters out there, I need to know. Right now, there's not many medicinal forests out there that are called that. I'm sure there are. Another thing I'll point out is that if you go and look at overhead photos of dryland Ethiopia and India, and I've been in parts of India and Nepal where most of the land's been deforested, turned into cropland or wasteland, and but there'll be areas of trees, and a lot of times those are the temples. They'll have sacred temple forests. So another type of forest is a sacred temple forest, and you can be sure that a lot of those sacred temple forest species are going to be medicinal. And so in a sense, we could say a creating medicinal sacred forest in a way. Also, aren't all forests sacred, or should be considered so? Any rate, they're just a little bit on the international scene. It's like everywhere can make their own medicinal forest, where if you get above tree line or beyond the tree line on the Arctic, you might have to go for shrubs. But I'm sure we can come up with a tundra medicinal plant list and do that too. Okay.
I love the idea of starting a map. Actually, the HerbRally's origins lived in my head probably for a year or two before I actually started anything, because I figured I had to have like this perfect like world map with all the dots and stuff like that of these various herbalism events happening, and then I just decided to turn it into a list. But I did want to ask you, maybe this is a naive question, when you're talking about promoting this idea of creating this medicinal forests, are you suggesting people do this on, say, their own like tiny plot of land or large plot of land, or are you talking about potentially even, say, like a city park or something like that?
All of the above, private, public.
Yeah.
And in a sense, you could take an existing ecosystem and enrich it with more medicinal plants. And so you don't have to necessarily start from ground zero. And it would be, I bet a lot of parks would be open to the idea of just like a little medicinal grove or something as part of the park. Yeah. Of course, when you have your own private land, you can do what you want quicker and without as much bureaucracy and
sure.
stuff. So they both have their pluses and minuses. But all scales. I have here, when you get here to the Met-How, Mason, I'll take you over to my 2-acre medicinal forest. I have a 2-acre medicinal forest that's 25 years old, and it's just full of medicinal trees and shrubs and herbs and weeds and plants. And any rate, we'll show you what we have going here, because I actually have one. I actually have one, a really nice one that's got some age to it, and we have some videos on it. So actually, I could tell your listeners that I have, I think, 4 YouTube channels. And one of them is called, Anna Pilata, it made one of them, and her name's on it. But if you could probably just Google Friends of the Trees or Michael Pilarski on YouTube, and you'd probably end up be able to find your way to the different channels. There's the Global Earth Repair channel, the Anna Pilata channel, Friends of the Tree Society channel, and so people can find those. I think there may be one called the Fairy Library as well.
Well, I'll do my best to find all of them and leave the links in the show notes as well.
And that's going to do it for today's episode. Thanks so much for listening to the HerbRally podcast. If you'd like to hear more from us here at HerbRally, we now have a text message community, believe it or not. Basically, it's just updates from us. We send about 1 to 7 texts per week, notifying you about new events, videos, courses, podcasts. You get the idea. It's pretty much like our email newsletter, just in text form. So if you'd like to receive text messages from HerbRally, just text JOIN, that's JOIN, to the number 541-256-2895. Again, that's JOIN to number 541-256-2895. And to stop receiving texts, that's easy too. Just text STOP to the same number. It'll opt you out immediately. Okay, thanks again for listening. Have a great rest of your day.